Welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast with Angie Rozier, hosted by Birth Learning, where we help prepare folks for labor and birth with expertise coming from 20 years of experience in a busy doula practice, helping thousands of people prepare for labor, providing essential knowledge and tools for positive and empowering birth experiences.
Hi, my name's Angie Rozier, and I am glad to have you here with us today on the Ordinary Doula Podcast. So today's subject, I want to talk a little bit about something you may have heard of before called shoulder dystocia. So shoulder dystocia is what may happen right during delivery of the baby's head being born if the one of the shoulders gets stuck after the head is born. So I want you to imagine like moving a big piece of furniture through a doorway. I don't know if you've ever done that, like a wide chair, a couch, a dresser, something like that. Let's say the front edge makes it through fine, and that's just like the baby's head being born. That's coming out just fine. But then one of the corners of the furniture, some other piece of the furniture kind of gets stuck, like on the door frame. It's not totally stuck, but there's like a lip of door frame that's holding it back. So no matter how you push, you can't get it through, right? It won't just slide through. So what do? You are going to, we're not just going to keep yanking and hope that it works. We're going to kind of change the angle, tilt the furniture, turn it sideways, see how you can work it to get it through more smoothly. So that's very similar to what the birth team does when there is shoulder dystocia. They'd use different positions, maneuvers to kind of help the baby's shoulders, just like that furniture on the lip of a door frame, to rotate and shift and come through safely. So shoulder dystocia is not super common. It happens in 0.5 to 1% of births. So that's less than 1% of births this happens in. Not crazy common. Some indicators that it may happen, they're actually pretty sketchy. Like it's not easy to predict. But if we have what's called macrosomia, so a baby that we think is large, and that is a little bit challenging to determine exactly how big a baby will be, or LGA, large for gestational age. So if we have a suspected baby that we think is large, that increases the risk, but it's not a for sure thing that we're going to have shoulder dystocia. If the mom has diabetes, that could contribute to the likelihood of it happening. If there's been a prior shoulder dystocia, that actually could contribute to it happening. Having a operative, or that means like a instrument assisted vaginal birth, so that's like forceps or vacuums. And if it happens to someone once, kind of interesting to know that you have a 7% chance of reoccurrence. So it can happen again, with a 7% chance if somebody has had it before. So bigger babies, that's kind of what we're looking at here, is bigger babies may sometimes get stuck. And interesting, it says short maternal stature. So if we've got like short mamas, sometimes that may contribute to it. Not all the time, for sure, right? So what happens is with shoulder dystocia, the head is born and the baby's head comes out usually like the top back of the head. If you were to reach up and touch on top of your head, that's the part that presents first, and then the face starts to come out. And if that's happening, the head is being born, and your provider can kind of know that it's going to be happening by something that we call the turtle sign. So the head's coming out and then it kind of turtles back in. And that is because the anterior, or the front presenting shoulder, is getting hung up on the pubic bone. So it's usually that top shoulder is getting hung up on the pubic bone of the mom. So the head can come out, but the shoulder can't. So if you look around in your birth room, if you're at a hospital, you're going to have some fairly standard equipment around. There are going to be one or two stools that are probably like, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches off the ground. And they're just hanging around in the room somewhere. Take a look for where those are. I love to use those for all kinds of things, like helping a mom to open her pelvis during labor, stand as she's standing and put one foot up on a stool. Sometimes I'll sit on them to do counter pressure or whatever. But those stools are actually for shoulder dystocia. So the staff is all trained in what to do with this if the baby does get stuck. They sometimes can suspect it. Like, if you kind of know what to listen for, you might realize that they're suspecting shoulder dystocia and they'll kind of get ready for it. And honestly, most of the time they say that it doesn't happen. Like they're ready for it and generally it won't happen. I was at a birth recently where it did happen. And actually, this was a shorter mom. I think she's 5 foot or 5'2", I think 5 foot even, something like that. Very short. um, there's no signs that she was having a very large baby or anything like that. She pushed for, I don't know, 2 hours and 10 minutes. So standard, and long, prolonged pushing stage can give an indication of shoulder dystocia, but certainly not always. So she pushed for quite a while. And it was interesting. I was listening to the team talk and stuff. We had a midwife who was delivering, and nobody said anything, but a nurse walked in with a second stool. There was already a stool in the room. She walked in with a second stool, a shoulder dystocia stool, and I knew just exactly what she was thinking, as well as the rest of the team. So where I was standing, I was holding the mom's leg as she pushed, and she worked so hard, was doing amazing, and she kind of put that stool in a strategic place. So as the head was coming out, the midwife called shoulders. We got shoulder dystocia. Now sometimes there's like sticky shoulders, and that sticky is like it doesn't get stuck, but it's a little sticky, right? Like it takes a little bit of wiggling to get out. But when they actually do call a shoulder dystocia, there's kind of some steps they go through. They're going to recognize the turtling sign, um, and then the shoulder won't deliver within the usual time. And we want it to be, fairly soon after the head. So they'll announce kind of a shoulder dystocia, and people get into their zone here. Like that team is going to get into their work zone. They start a clock, like a nurse will start the clock, and they'll call for help, keep the patient informed as best they can. And they kind of go through a simple sequence of events um, where they call for help. They may evaluate for an episiotomy, like would an episiotomy be appropriate now? Now, episiotomy is not going to make more space in the bones because that's what the baby's head is being hung up on. But the episiotomy makes more space for internal maneuvers, and they don't jump to internal maneuvers first of all. That becomes later. But what happens, one of the first things they'll do, it's called the McRoberts. So a nurse will get on either side and they'll push anyone out of the way who's in the way, but they'll get on either side on those stools and they'll take the mom's legs kind of way back, so hyperflex her hips. And then they will add suprapubic pressure to that. So another nurse or one of those two nurses doing that will get right on top of the pubic bone and, like with the flat of her hand, give some pretty good pressure there. They used to do, and thank goodness they don't, I haven't seen it for a really long time, they used to do fundal pressure. So they'd go to the top of the uterus, the top of the mom's belly, and just like push down there. So it'd have somebody pushing on the pubic bone, someone cranking on the uterus. Both hips are back as they're trying to get that baby out. But they don't do any fundal pressure anymore, which is awesome. And then internal maneuvers, they'll kind of do some corkscrew to deliver that back, shoulder, and arm, to kind of to reduce the diameter of the baby's shoulders that are trying to come through. And then kind of a last resort is getting on all fours. So they'll help that mom turn over, epidural or no epidural, and get on all fours because that changes the angle of the pelvis as well. Now, kind of interesting to note, I'm all about movement and position and how helpful that is. If we were pushing on all fours, we would already be doing like the very most heroic thing we can do in a shoulder dystocia. So we can in effect have a less likelihood of shoulder dystocia by simply delivering in different positions, which can be good. So last resort would be, and this is, if we're not able to get this baby out, and we want the baby to come out because baby's getting squeezed like on their neck and things at this point. Maybe their cord is getting compressed and they're not getting great oxygenation. It's okay to sit the perineum for a little bit, but certainly not very long. So last resort, if they're not able to resolve this with all the maneuvers of mom's body and internally, then they'll do a clavicle fracture, like an intentional clavicle fracture of that baby, and the provider can just reach in and kind of pop their collarbone, and it's sad, like it does break it. But that helps the baby to be born much more quickly because that gives, of course, a little bit more room. So I shudder to think of that. And I have seen a couple babies, not intentional. Let me think if I have. I might have seen one get an intentional break with the shoulder dystocia, but I have seen a couple break unintentionally, and we're not quite aware of that for a little bit. But there's some pretty acute coaching going on at these points. There's some pretty steady narration. Someone will take charge with shoulder dystocia. The maneuvers take 30 to 60 seconds. The nurses, everyone in their role knows exactly what they're doing. They document it very well, and they're trained. They're trained to do this. So incredibly rare, 0.5 to 1% of babies or deliveries is this going to be happening. And it's not really very predictable. So it's not predictable. Like I told you, I've seen many, many times they prepare for it and then we just didn't even need it. They were like already they're on the stools and the baby just slides right out. So maybe anticipate some quick movement and quick working and talking if that is the case. But just want you to know a little bit about shoulder dystocia and why it's a problem for the baby is it can being stuck can kind of mean pressure on the neck and nerves, may lead to injuries, broken collarbone or temporary weakness in an arm or something. Babies can't tell us about that, but you can kind of notice in some of their behaviors. Most heal well, of course, and then for the mom, for the birthing person, it can increase the chance of heavy bleeding after, and it can also cause more vaginal or perineal tears, as you can imagine, as they're doing work with the maneuvering. So, and the one, that's pretty true to form, the birth I was at a few days ago with the shoulder dystocia, there was extra bleeding afterwards. They watched that mom pretty closely for a little while, but realize that your birth team, whether you're at a birth center, they can handle this, in almost all cases, and they're amazing at doing different positions and avoiding it in many instances. But your providers are going to be trained with steps to help free the shoulder quickly and safely. So that's adjusting legs. That'll often solve the problem right there. And moving the mom's body as needed. So most people, are just fine. They recover well when this is the case, and it's actually pretty rare. So, which is kind of nice to know. So just like that couch that kind of gets stuck if you have a piece of furniture that's getting stuck in a door frame, this is very similar, right? If change the angle. In birth, we use the same principles, adjusting the angle so that that shoulder can get out. Hopefully that answers any questions you may have about shoulder dystocia. Sometimes, they say get ready for a shoulder or, suspected shoulders. Hopefully you're not going to run into that, but I want you to kind of know and be aware of what happens. It gets a little tense for a minute, but no, everybody's doing their job and they're doing their job they're trained to do. Like I said, I've only seen it a very handful of times, small handful of times in the 20 years that 20 some odd I've been doing this. So hopefully you'll never see it. It's a pretty rare thing actually to occur. Thank you again for being here with us on the Ordinary Doula podcast. We sure do enjoy our audience and love to see the listens that we're getting and the downloads. We appreciate that. And we hope, again, like always, that you will go out and make a human connection with someone today. Please reach out and make a human connection. Maybe somebody you've seen recently or somebody you haven't. Make a connection and make a difference in someone's life. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Ordinary Doula podcast with Angie Rozier, hosted by Birth Learning. Episode credits will be in the show notes. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many aspects of giving birth.